exhausted girls in her immediate area among the peasantry, and started in on the children of the other nobles. That the nobles went, hey, this has got to stop.
She was a wealthy, well-connected woman. Who was going to stop her? If you get somebody who is able to do as they please with no moral accountability or legal accountability, and they have within themselves that sadistic streak, that really is the heart of darkness.
The Countess's social stature makes it impossible for her to be arrested. In the 1600s, Hungarian royalty are simply above the law, but they are still subjects of King Rudolf II. When Báthory's deeds come to his attention, her decades of bloody games come to an abrupt end.
And while her accomplices were put to death for their roles in this whole affair, she was royalty. Elizabeth Bathory could not be killed.
She could, however, be punished, and her punishment is suitably horrible. She was sentenced to solitary confinement, shut into a room in her castle for the rest of her life. Elizabeth Bathory dies in 1614. Her macabre legacy lives to this day.
The court record of the time indicated between 600 and 700 young girls who lost their lives during Elizabeth's reign before she was put in prison.
She is without a doubt one of the earliest and most prolific serial killers in history.
There's no question in my mind that this constitutes real vampirization. Elizabeth Bathory was a vampire.
And many historians theorize that Elizabeth Bathory's influence may have reached even further.
As Dracula was formed in Stoker's research, it was not just Vlad Dracul or Vlad Dracula who became the character, but some bits and pieces of Elizabeth Bathory became part of the Dracula story.
More than anything else, what Elizabeth Bathory brings to the Dracula legend is the blood urge. Her obsession is nothing new. The power and magic associated with blood reach back to the dark origins of human history.
All blood rituals probably go back to this notion of the power behind the liquid itself. So many cultures around the world have developed historically various kinds of rituals that involve often the spilling of blood, whether it's human or animal blood, as part of a religious ceremony.
For many religions, blood rituals using real blood are as much a part of daily life now as they were 1,000 years ago. In this ceremony, a voodoo priest sacrifices a cow to a voodoo spirit. In return, the spirit Sakpata protects against disease, provides bountiful crops, and contributes to the general well-being of the community. But in European tradition, blood rituals seldom have such a positive association. The consumption of blood, especially human blood, is considered by most a mortal sin. In a tiny Hungarian village in 1715, an uninvited dinner guest goes one step too far. When he shows a hunger for more than the host's supper, the consequences are horrific and deadly. By the early 1700s, fear of vampires has become rampant throughout most of Europe. The story of Countess Elizabeth Bathory is one reason why, but there are others.
This period of time gets to be known as the vampire epidemic, and stories just abound all over of various manifestations of vampires.
Although the new science of medicine begins to reveal some of the secrets of human life, death and disease remain disturbing mysteries. Surely there must be something or someone responsible.
When we don't understand something, it frightens us. The fear is transferred into blaming someone or something for causing this. The Black Plague was blamed on vampires. Cases of tuberculosis, cholera, all of these things were blamed on vampires.
We have to make assumptions, and these assumptions led to a very, very powerful myth in the case of vampires.
As reports of vampire attacks continue to rise, Europe falls into a state of hysteria. Many of the vampire cases continue to defy explanation, including this one from the small village of Haida-Maké in Hungary.
May I present Celia? And Janos? Oh, and my wife Magda. Ah, please. Thank you.
As night falls, a soldier arrives to spend the night with a local family.
For our guest.
Thank you.
Lord, please bless our farm and our home. Amen.
For all involved, the dinner is off to a pleasant start. But on this particular evening, fate has other plans.
An uninvited guest, someone they didn't expect, showed up. And a hush fell over the whole family. There was a very strange silent dinner, which led the soldier not to really understand what was going on at all.
After a short, uncomfortable meal, the family and the visiting soldier retire for the night, leaving the farmer and the strange, uninvited guest alone. Nobody knows exactly what happened next.
He came up the next morning, found his host dead, drained apparently of blood.
His father killed him. He's dead.
This guest was actually the host's father, who had appeared after having been dead for 10 years.
Drained of blood, the farmer is the victim of a vampire attack. Everyone knows exactly who the uninvited guest is, and they know where to find him. By nightfall, the soldier gathers his unit and heads straight to the local graveyard.
Let's get a shovel here.
They dig up the grave of this individual.
Get some light down there.
and find fresh blood around his mouth. The skin has no pallor, it's ruddy and fresh looking. There is no rigor mortis. It seems to be a living being that had just died.
That meant that the earth did not receive the body and heaven did not receive the soul. And therefore, this was a candidate for vampirism because death would not have it.
The soldiers are well prepared for this eventuality. They quickly bring forward the tools required for the macabre task ahead. Re-killing the dead.
There are basic ways that you dispatch a vampire. You can attack the heart.
In 1715, the tool of choice is a stake, fashioned specifically for this task from local hardwood.
Forget the age of reason now. Let's stake him to the ground so that he can't rise again.
The axe in there.
But tradition dictates that a stake through a vampire's heart is not enough. The soldiers will not leave until the job is done fully and correctly.
The idea of keeping a corpse dead was so prominent that as part of the burial ritual, corpses were decapitated, simply as a matter of safety, of preventing them from becoming vampires.
All in a day's work at a time when keeping the dead dead is a serious cultural concern. But now, almost 300 years later, could there be another, more scientific explanation for these macabre occurrences? International forensic expert Dr. Mark Benecke has a theory that may offer a scientific answer. He travels to Bucharest, Romania, where he finds what he needs to prove his point. A few fresh corpses. Over the last 1,000 years, in virtually every part of the world, interest in vampires and reports of vampire sightings have been on the increase. Experts have offered many logical explanations for why they are so prevalent.
A person could have nothing more wrong with him or her than insomnia and be seen by neighbors walking around at night and be accused of being a vampire.
But belief in real vampires persists. In 1746, Roman Catholic scholar Dom Augustin Calmet even goes so far as to publish a study on the subject. After conducting exhaustive interviews and personal investigations, Calmet comes to the conclusion that vampires do, in fact, exist. His book becomes the primary instructional text for a new generation of vampire hunters.
Governments would issue official listings of what kinds of symptoms or signs there would be that there's a vampire in their midst.
Along